Hi there. Tonight we drift along the Nile's shimmering banks, where the air hums with secret, and the stars above ancient Egypt wink at lovers below. You're standing in Thebes 3,000 years ago, sandals sinking into warm sand, the scent of lotus flowers curling around you, torches flicker outside mud brick homes, and somewhere a lute's soft strum carries on the breeze. This is a world where sex isn't just a private act. It's woven into the gods' plans, the pharaoh's power, and the rhythm of the river itself. Fair warning, you probably won't survive this heat without a papyrus fan and a good sense of humor. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not just a tourist here, you're living it, breathing the same air as farmers, priests, and queens who saw love and sex as part of life's sacred dance. In ancient Egypt, intimacy wasn't hidden behind locked doors. It was celebrated, regulated, and sometimes even taxed. The Nile's floods dictated harvests, and fertility in the fields mirrored fertility in the bedroom. Historians still argue whether this openness stemmed from practicality or divine command, but either way, it shaped everything. Take the goddess Hathor, for instance. She's not just a deity of music and dance, but the queen of desire, her temples buzzing with rituals that blur the line between worship and seduction. You'd see her statues everywhere, cow horns crowning her head, eyes promising pleasure. One quirky tidbit? Some Egyptians believed her sacred sistrum, a rattling instrument, could spark passion just by its sound. Imagine trying to flirt with that jangling in the background. Good luck keeping a straight face. Now picture yourself wandering through a bustling marketplace. Merchants hawk barley beer, kids chase geese, and a woman in a linen dress barters for turquoise beads. Sex is in the air, not literally, thank the gods, but in the way people move, talk, and even dress. Men and women alike wear tight, sheer linen that leaves little to the imagination, especially in this heat. It's not scandalous, it's just practical. You'd notice couples holding hands, a rare sight in some ancient cultures, but here, totally normal. Love was public, and so was desire. A mainstream fact to ground us. Marriage contracts from the Middle Kingdom, around 2000 BCE, often included clauses about sexual fidelity, especially for women. But here's the cheeky part. Men could dodge those rules if they paid a fine. Typical, right? You'd probably roll your eyes at the double standard, but that's the deal. Let's linger on that marketplace a bit longer. You spot a scribe scratching notes on papyrus, maybe recording a love poem for a client. These weren't sappy Hallmark cards. They were raw, vivid, and sometimes downright spicy. One surviving poem compares a lover's skin to honey. Sweet, but you'd need a bath after. The humor here? Scribes probably overcharged for the fancy metaphors, and some poor farmer paid extra for, "Your eyes are like twin moons." You'd chuckle, but it worked. Poetry was a shortcut to someone's heart, or at least their bed. The Egyptians didn't shy away from desire's physical side, but they wrapped it in beauty, tying it to the gods and the land. Sex wasn't just about making babies, though that was huge. It was about connection, power, and sometimes just having a good time. As you stroll past a temple, you hear chants and smell incense. Priests are busy, and not just with prayers. Some rituals involve offerings that sound absurd today, like lettuce, believed to boost fertility because of its milky sap. Yes, lettuce. You'd probably snicker, but to them it was as serious as a heart attack. This blend of sacred and silly is what makes ancient Egypt so human. They loved, they lusted, they made questionable choices, just like us. And as you settle into this world, you realize you're not just learning about sex, you're stepping into a culture where every touch, every glance, carried the weight of the Nile's endless flow. Word count, 1052. You're standing outside a temple of Hathor, the air thick with myrrh and the faint jangle of sistrums. Torches cast shadows on limestone walls, and you can feel the Nile's damp breath on your skin. This isn't just a place of worship. It's a hub where sex and spirituality tangle like lovers under a palm tree. The priests and priestesses here aren't chanting about crops alone. They're channeling divine fertility, ensuring the gods keep Egypt's fields and families fruitful. You're about to step inside, but don't expect a sermon. This is a ritual that hums with energy, and you're caught in its rhythm. The temple's inner sanctum glows with flickering oil lamps, and you notice carvings of Hathor, her serene face framed by cow horns. She's the goddess of love, music, and that spark that makes your heart race when someone cute walks by. Here, sex isn't just a human urge, it's a cosmic force. A mainstream fact anchors us. Archaeological records from the New Kingdom around 1300 BCE show temples hosted festivals where fertility rites included dances that were, let's say, less than subtle. These weren't just parties, they were sacred acts to please the gods. You'd see women twirling in sheer linen, their movements mimicking the Nile's flow, while men offered wine and barley to statues. It's hypnotic, but you'd probably trip over your own sandals trying to keep up. Now here's a quirky tidbit. Some rituals involved offering models of genitalia, carved from wood or clay, to ensure divine blessings for conception. Imagine the artisan's face chiseling away, wondering if this was their finest hour. You'd stifle a laugh, but to the Egyptians this was no joke. These offerings were left at altars, as common as flowers at a modern wedding. Historians still argue whether these rites were purely symbolic, or if they hinted at actual temple intimacy. Some scholars lean toward metaphor, others whisper about sacred unions in hidden chambers. You're not sure what to believe, but the mystery keeps you peering into the shadows. As you move deeper into the temple, you spot a priestess pouring milk over a small altar. Milk, like that lettuce from before, was another fertility symbol. Think of it as ancient Egypt's version of a protein shake for the gods. The humor here? You'd probably spill half the jug trying to look holy, and some poor apprentice would have to mop it up. The priestess doesn't flinch though. Her role is serious. She's a conduit to Hathor, ensuring every birth, every harvest keeps Egypt alive. You notice her coal-lined eyes and gold anklets, signs of status. Women like her weren't just spiritual figures. They held real power, sometimes advising pharaohs on matters of the heart or the bedroom. You linger by a wall etched with scenes of couples embracing, not explicit but suggestive enough to make you blush. These images aren't art for art's sake. They're instructions, prayers, and promises rolled into one. The Egyptians believed the gods watched every act of love, judging its purity and purpose. You'd feel a bit exposed, knowing your private moments might be divine gossip. But there's comfort in it too. This culture saw sex as a gift, not a sin. As you step back into the night, the temple's glow fading, you carry that thought. Here, desire was holy, and you're just starting to unravel its rules. You're slipping through the heavy curtains of a pharaoh's palace, the air cooler here, scented with frankincense and the faint tang of polished cedar. Golden braziers cast a soft glow, and you're tiptoeing past guards who look like they'd rather be napping.
This is the royal bedroom, or at least the suite where pharaohs and their consorts play out their most private moments. It's not just a place for rest, it's a stage where sex, power, and divine duty collide. You're about to peek behind the veil of royalty, but keep quiet. One wrong step, and you're explaining yourself to a very cranky vizier. The pharaoh's
Bed is massive, draped in linen finer than anything you've seen by the Nile. You notice carvings of Bez, the dwarf-like god of protection and childbirth, grinning from the headboard. His goofy face is supposed to ward off evil, but you'd probably giggle at the irony. Protection in the bedroom takes many forms. A mainstream fact grounds us. During the 18th dynasty, around 1500 BCE, pharaohs like Akhenaten often married multiple wives, including foreign princesses, to seal alliances. Sex here wasn't just about love or even heirs. It was diplomacy, a contract signed in the dark. You'd feel the weight of that lying beside someone chosen by politics, not passion. Here's a quirky tidbit. Royal consorts sometimes used special perfumes like lotus oil mixed with crocodile fat to signal their status. Imagine the smell floral, but with a whiff of swamp. You'd probably pass on the cologne, but it was a status symbol, like wearing a crown in bed. Historians still argue whether these marriages were consummated for show, or if genuine affection ever bloomed. Some say queens like Nefertiti wielded real influence, whispering strategies between pillow talk, while others think they were glorified chess pieces. You're not sure, but you can feel the tension in the air, like a game where every move matters. You glance at a side table where a tray holds figs, honey, and a small jar of something suspiciously green. It's probably a fertility tonic. Royals were obsessed with producing heirs, and the pressure was intense. The humor here? You'd probably choke on the bitter brew, wondering if it's worth it for a prince or two. The pharaoh, meanwhile, is expected to perform like a god, his virility tied to Egypt's prosperity. If the Nile floods weekly, guess who's getting side-eyed? You'd sympathize, but it's hard when the guy's got a gold-plated fan bearer. On speed dial, as you ease toward the balcony, you see stars over the Nile, and you hear a soft lute from somewhere below. The royal bedroom isn't just a place for sex. It's where Egypt's future is shaped, one night at a time. You're starting to grasp the rules. Pharaohs don't just make love, they make history. But you're also wondering about the human side, the stolen glances or awkward moments that don't make it into the hieroglyphs. For now, you slip back into the shadows, carrying the scent of lotus and the weight of a crown. You're crouched in a dimly lit room, the air heavy with the scent of burnt resin and crushed herbs. A clay lamp flickers, casting shadows on a low table cluttered with jars, amulets, and a suspiciously sticky papyrus scroll. You're not just visiting. You're about to try your hand at ancient Egyptian love magic, the kind that could make someone's heart skip or get you in deep trouble with the local priest. The Nile hums outside, and you're feeling a mix of excitement and dread. Like you're about to text your crush something risky. This is the world of spells and potions, where desire gets a supernatural nudge, and you're diving in. The Egyptians took love magic seriously, blending faith, science, and a dash of wishful thinking. A mainstream fact sets the scene. Texts from the Ramesside period around 1200 BCE describe spells written on papyrus, often invoking gods like Isis or Hathor to ignite passion. You're holding one such spell, scribbled in black ink, promising to make someone burn for you like fire on straw. It's poetic, but you'd probably fumble the pronunciation, sounding more like you're ordering takeout than summoning divine intervention. The process involves chanting, burning specific herbs, and maybe spitting into a clay figurine. spit. You'd wince, but it's supposed to carry your essence, gross, yet oddly personal. Here's a quirky tidbit, one popular. Potion included honey, crocodile dung, and Nile water mixed under a full moon. Yes, dung again. Remember that royal perfume? You'd gag at the smell, imagining some lovesick fool stirring this in their backyard. The humor hits when you picture the cleanup. Good luck explaining that mess to your nosy neighbor. Historians still argue whether these potions were placebos, or if Egyptians believed they rewired fate. Some say it was psychological, boosting confidence. Others point to temple records, suggesting priests profited big from guaranteed charms. You're skeptical, but you're also tempted to whisper the incantation just in case. You pick up a small amulet shaped like a heart, carved from carnelian, said to bind someone's affection. The spell instructs you to wear it against your skin while picturing your beloved. You try it, feeling a bit silly, like you're in a cosmic rom-com. The room feels warmer, or maybe that's just the lamp overheating. You're supposed to offer the amulet to Hathor's altar, but you're more worried about dropping it in the dark. The Egyptians believed intent mattered as much as ingredients. Your focus, your longing, powered the magic. You'd chuckle at it. The thought of modern dating apps borrowing this vibe. Swipe right, but only if you've got a heart amulet. As you mix a potion, honey, no dung, thank the gods, you notice the scroll's fine print. Timing matters. Spells cast at dawn, when Ra's light touches the Nile, supposedly work best. You'd probably oversleep and miss the window, but the Egyptians were punctual about love. The ritual ends with you burying the figurine under your beloved's doorstep. Sneaky, but you'd trip over a sandal and wake the whole village. This blend of devotion and absurdity makes you smile. Egyptians loved with strategy, not just feeling. As you blow out the lamp, the room fades to moonlight, and you wonder if that spell might just work. For now, you're content to let the Nile carry your thoughts downstream. You're sitting on a woven reed mat in a modest mud brick house, the Nile's gentle lapping just beyond the walls. The air smells of baked bread and faintly of the sesame oil your host rubs into her hair. You're not in a palace now. You're among commoners, where marriage isn't about divine mandates or diplomatic chess, but about survival, affection, and some surprisingly detailed paperwork. You're about to dive into the messy, practical world of everyday Egyptian unions, where love might bloom, but contracts keep the household running. It's less romantic than those temple chants, but it feels real, like you're eavesdropping on your neighbors' lives. Marriage among regular Egyptians, farmers, weavers, potters, was a practical affair, but not without warmth. A mainstream fact grounds us. By the Middle Kingdom, around 2000 BCE, marriage agreements were often written on papyrus, detailing property, dowries, and what happened if things went south. You're handed a sample contract, the ink smudged from years of handling. It promises the bride a third of the household goods if her husband strays or divorces her. You'd raise an eyebrow at the foresight. Sounds like a prenup with better
handwriting. The catch: these deals favoured men who could end marriages easier than women.
You'd probably mutter about fairness, but that's the Nile's flow. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some couples sealed their bond by eating a shared loaf of bread laced with salt, believed to bind their fates. Imagine the crumbs on your tunic, and the awkward silence if someone chews too loudly. You'd chuckle, but this ritual was sacred, like a wedding cake with higher stakes. Historians still argue whether these contracts reflected genuine equality or just lip service to keep women content. Some point to clauses protecting brides' rights. Others say men held all the power behind the papyrus. You're not sure, but you feel the weight of that bread, heavy with promises. You glance around the house. The couple here, let's call them Ani and Meret, bicker over who forgot to feed the goats. It's mundane, but you notice Meret's bronze bracelet, her dowries, pride glinting as she gestures. Marriages like theirs often started young, teens sometimes younger, arranged but not always forced. You'd wince at the age, but Annie's shy grin when Meret teases him hints at something real. Sex in these homes wasn't just for heirs. It was a bond, a moment of joy after a day of grinding barley. The humour hits when you spot a clay figurine of Bez, that goofy god from the pharaoh's bed, tucked in a corner. Even commoners wanted divine backup in the bedroom. Guess everyone's got performance anxiety. As you sip barley beer Meret offers, you realise these contracts weren't cold. They let couples build lives, share burdens, and maybe steal a kiss. By the Nile, you're starting to see marriage as a dance, part duty, part desire, with a lot of paperwork. The sun dips low, painting the walls gold, and you lean back, wondering how Annie and Meret make it work. For now, you're content to listen to their laughter, a reminder that love, even in ancient Egypt, was never just a signature. You're standing in a dimly lit corridor of a noble's villa, the walls alive with colourful hieroglyphs that seem to pulse under the flicker of oil lamps. The air carries a hint of dust and the sweet tang of dried figs stacked nearby. You're not here to admire the art. You're decoding the subtle, steamy messages carved into these walls where intimacy gets immortalized in stone. These aren't just decorations. They're a glimpse into how Egyptians saw sex, love, and the private moments that happened behind linen curtains. You're about to play archaeologist, but with a twist, and you're hoping you don't blush too hard. The hieroglyphs around you aren't explicit, but they're suggestive enough to raise your eyebrows. You spot a carving of a couple, hands touching, lotus flowers draped over their shoulders. A mainstream fact anchors us. Wall art from the New Kingdom, around 1300 BCE, often used symbols like lotuses or mandrakes to hint at fertility and desire. The lotus, with its petals unfolding at dawn, was code for sexual awakening. You'd smirk at the metaphor. It's classier than a winky emoji, but the vibe's the same. These images weren't pornographic. They were poetic, tying human passion to the Nile's endless cycle. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some carvings show couples sharing fruit, like pomegranates, which was slang for, well, let's call it romantic assets. Imagine the artist giggling as they chipped away, knowing the neighbours would get the joke. You'd probably snort, picturing yourself offering a pomegranate at a modern date. Good luck with that pickup line. Historians still argue whether these symbols were purely decorative or carried magical weight, meant to bless the household with love or heirs. Some say they're just art, others think they're spells etched in stone. You're not sure, but the carvings feel alive, whispering secrets as you trace their lines. You move to another panel where a woman holds a mirror, her reflection framed by Ankh symbols for life. Mirrors weren't just for vanity, they were tools of seduction linked to Hathor's beauty. You'd fumble with the bronze handle, feeling like you're in a rom-com montage. The humour hits when you notice a tiny carving of a cat, Hathor's sacred animal, lounging nearby. Cats as wingmen? Only in Egypt. These details ground you in a world where sex wasn't hidden. It was celebrated, coded into art that doubled as a prayer. You imagine the villa's owners, maybe a wealthy scribe and his wife, smiling at these walls, knowing their love was part of something bigger. As you step back, the lamplight dances across a final image. Two figures, entwined, there, outlined soft but unmistakable. It's not graphic, but it's intimate, a reminder that even in this formal art, Egyptians honored the human side of desire. You're starting to see these hieroglyphs as stories, not just symbols. each one a snapshot of a moment, a hope, or a stolen glance. The villa grows quiet, the Nile's hum faint outside, and you linger, wondering what other secrets these walls might spill. You're kneeling in the shade of a sycamore tree by the Nile, the water's edge lapping at your sandals. A breeze carries the scent of wet clay and blooming papyrus, and you're holding a small linen pouch, its contents gritty and suspiciously pungent. This isn't a picnic. You're diving into the bizarre world of ancient Egyptian contraception, where ingenuity, superstition, and a touch of desperation mix like a questionable smoothie. The goal? Controlling when the next little scribe or farmer arrives. You're about to test some of these methods, metaphorically speaking, and you're already side-eyeing the ingredients. Contraception in ancient Egypt was less about choice and more about survival. Too many mouths strained a family's grain stores. A mainstream fact sets the stage. The Ebers Papyrus, a medical text from around 1550 BCE, lists recipes for barriers and spermicides, including one using acacia gum, which ferments into lactic acid, a natural sperm killer. You're impressed by the science, but the application? Messy. You'd probably spill the sticky paste and curse your clumsy hands, wondering if celibacy's easier. The Egyptians didn't have pharmacies, so they got creative, and you're starting to respect their hustle. Here's a quirky tidbit. One method involved crocodile dung mixed with honey, shaped into a pessary to block the way. Yes, dung again. Remember that love potion? You'd gag at the thought, picturing some poor apothecary stirring this in a back alley. The humor hits when you imagine explaining this to your friends. Sorry, I'm late, had to wrangle some croc poop. Historians still argue whether these concoctions worked or were just wishful thinking. Some say the dung's alkalinity might have done something, others call it placebo at best. You're not volunteering to test it, but you're curious how anyone kept a straight face. You open the pouch, revealing a less offensive mix: ground dates, acacia, and a pinch of natron, the salt used in mummification. The recipe says to soak it in milk and insert it before things get heated. You'd fumble the timing, probably dropping dates in the Nile and attracting fish instead of romance. The process feels like a cooking show gone wrong, but it shows how seriously Egyptians took family planning. Women, especially, bore the burden. Men had fewer responsibilities here. You notice a clay jar nearby, likely holding a post-act rinse of garlic and wine. Garlic? You'd laugh, imagining the bedroom smelling like a bad taverna. As you tie the pouch shut, you realize these methods weren't just practical, they were acts of agency. Women whispered these recipes by the river, sharing secrets to control their futures. The sun dips lower, painting the Nile gold, and you feel a quiet awe for their resourcefulness. You're not sure you trust that crocodile dung, but you're starting to see contraception as a kind of rebellion, a way to bend fate in a world ruled by gods and floods. You're drifting on a reed boat along the Nile, the water glinting under a midday sun that feels like it's personally offended by your existence. Papyrus stalks sway, and a heron eyes you like you owe it lunch. You're not just sightseeing, you're meeting the gods who rule fertility, the divine heavyweights who decide if Egypt's fields and families thrive. These deities aren't distant. They're in every birth, every harvest, and every hopeful glance between lovers. You're about to learn their names and quirks, and you're hoping you don't accidentally offend one with your sweaty, mortal presence. The Egyptians saw fertility as a divine gift tied to the Nile's rhythms. A mainstream fact anchors us. Min, the god of male fertility, was worshipped in festivals dating back to the Old Kingdom, around 2500 BCE, where his statues, often sporting an impressive erection, were paraded to ensure bountiful crops and kids. You're trying not to stare, but Min's confidence is inspiring. You'd probably trip over a sandal during the procession, drawing glares from priests. His role was clear: keep the cycle of life rolling from barley to babies. Here's a quirky tidbit. Min's sacred plant was lettuce. That milky sapped wonder we met before, offered to him in heaps because it mimicked his vigor. Imagine stacking lettuce at a shrine, feeling like you're in a divine salad bar. You'd snicker, but the crowd's dead serious, tossing leaves like it's a rock concert. Historians still argue whether these rituals were about actual sex or symbolic potency. Some say Min's festivals included risque dances. Others insist it was all metaphor for the land's renewal. You're not sure, but the lettuce piles are giving you strong farmers' market vibes. You paddle closer to a small shrine where a statue of Taweret looms. She's a hippo goddess, pregnant and fierce, protecting mothers and newborns. You notice women leaving tiny amulets at her feet, their faces soft with hope. Tawaret's not as flashy as Min, but she's vital. Childbirth was risky, and her toothy grin promises safety. You'd probably leave an offering too, just to be polite. The humor hits when you spot a clay hippo figurine with comically oversized eyes like it's judging your rowing skills. These gods feel human, their flaws and powers woven into Egypt's daily grind. As you tie the boat to a post, you realize fertility gods like Min and Taweret aren't just about sex. They're about life's fragile balance, the Nile's flood, a woman's pregnancy, a field's yield, all connected, all sacred. You're starting to feel the river's pulse, like it's carrying you towards something bigger. The sun's still brutal, but you're content to drift, wondering how these gods shaped every bedroom whisper and every new life along the Nile. You're weaving through a crowded market in Memphis, the sun baking the clay beneath your feet, the air buzzing with shouts of fishmongers and the clink of copper coins. You're not here for the barley or the shiny beads. You're watching. The women around you, their linen dresses swaying, their laughter sharp and confident. In ancient Egypt, women weren't just wives or mothers. They held a quiet, potent power in the bedroom and beyond, shaping love and sex in ways that ripple through the stalls. You're about to uncover how they wielded that influence, and you're already noticing the way heads turn when certain women pass by. Women in Egypt had more autonomy than in many ancient cultures, especially when it came to matters of the heart. A mainstream fact grounds us. Legal texts from the New Kingdom, around 1300 BCE, show women could own property, initiate divorces, and even sue for mistreatment, giving them leverage in relationships. You're imagining a woman like Nebet, a weaver with coal-lined eyes, negotiating her marriage contract with the confidence of a modern lawyer. You'd probably applaud her, but you'd also trip over a stray goose trying to keep up. Her power wasn't just legal, it was social, rooted in charm and strategy. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some women wore blue faience hip beads under their dresses, strung to jingle with every step, signaling availability or fertility. Picture the white sound like a subtle wind chime, turning heads in the market. You'd laugh, wondering if you'd ever be bold enough to try that kind of entrance. Historians still argue whether this autonomy meant true equality or just a practical workaround. In a male-led world, some point to women's property rights as revolutionary. Others say men still called the shots behind closed doors. You're not sure, but Nebet's sly smile as she haggles suggests she's got more control than the papyrus admits. You pause by a stall where a woman sells amulets of Hathor, the love goddess we met in that temple. She's chatting with customers, dropping hints about which charms spark romance. Her influence isn't loud, but it's there, in the way she advises a shy bride, or teases a nervous suitor. The humor hits when you overhear her suggest a love potion to a grumpy old merchant. Good luck with that, you think, picturing him grumbling into his beer. Women like her were matchmakers, confidants, even informal therapists, steering the markets. Romantic currents. You're starting to see how their power flowed, not from thrones, but from whispers and well-timed glances. As you move on, the market's noise fades, and you realize these women weren't just navigating love, they were shaping it, bending rules with a wink. The Nile glints nearby, reflecting their strength, and you're left wondering how many deals were sealed not in contracts, but in the quiet spaces where women ruled. For now, you're content to linger, catching the rhythm of their laughter like a song you'll never quite forget. You're lounging in the shade of a mud brick workshop, the air thick with the scent of sawdust and warm beer. Around you, men, carpenters, scribes, even a grumpy fisherman, haul tools or barter for bread, their voices a steady hum. You're not here to admire their handiwork, you're peeling back the layers of what society expected from men in the bedroom and beyond. In ancient Egypt, male roles in sex and love came with a rule book, written in tradition and enforced by prying neighbors. You're about to step into their sandals, and you're already sensing the pressures heavier than a limestone block. Men were the backbone of Egyptian households, expected to provide, protect, and yes, perform. A mainstream fact sets the stage. Deir el-Medina records from around 1200 BCE show men were legally bound to support their wives and kids, with penalties for neglecting marital duties. That's code for keeping the wife happy in every sense. You're picturing a guy like Kaa, a mason with calloused hands, sweating not just from quarry work, but from the side-eye he'd get if he slacked at home. You'd probably offer him a sympathetic nod, but good luck dodging the village gossip. Here's a quirky tidbit. Men sometimes carried small amulets shaped like Min, that fertility god with the lettuce obsession, tucked into their kilts for virility boosts. Imagine fumbling one out during a romantic moment. Talk about a mood killer. You'd chuckle, but these charms were serious business, like a divine energy drink. Historians still argue whether this pressure made men anxious or just pragmatic. Some say the amulets were confidence boosters, others think they hint at societal stress to prove masculinity. You're not sure, but Kaa's nervous glance at his pouch suggests it's not all swagger. You watch a young man, maybe a scribe's apprentice, flirt with a girl by the well. He's trying hard, offering a string of beads, but his boasts about his barley halls sound rehearsed. The humor hits when she rolls her eyes. You've been there, overselling yourself to impress someone. Men were expected to initiate romance, often with gifts or poetry, but they also had to navigate expectations of fidelity, at least on paper. Wealthier guys could afford concubines, but most, like Kaa, stuck to one wife, balancing desire with duty. You notice a clay figure of Bes, that goofy bedroom god, on a nearby shelf. Even here, men leaned on divine backup. As you sip some beer, watered down, but it's free, you realize these expectations weren't just personal. They tied men to Egypt's bigger picture. A man's virility mirrored the Nile's floods. If one failed, the other got blamed. You're starting to feel the weight of that, but also the humanity. Men loved, stumbled, and hoped just like anyone. The workshop grows quiet as the sun dips, and you lean back, wondering how Kaa keeps it all together. You're swept into the heart of a festival, the night air buzzing with drums and the clink of bronze sistra. Torches line the Nile's banks, their flames dancing on the water, and you're surrounded by a crowd in their finest linen, faces painted with ochre and coal. This isn't just a party, it's a celebration of desire, honoring gods like Hathor and Min, where love and sex take center stage under the stars. You're joining the revelry, but you're also trying not to spill your barley beer or step on someone's sandal in the chaos. It's wild, sacred, and a little overwhelming, like a divine block party. These festivals were Egypt's way of linking human passion to cosmic order. A mainstream fact grounds us. The Feast of Opet, held in Thebes around 1400 BCE, included rituals where statues of gods were carried through crowds, sparking dances and songs that celebrated fertility. You're caught in the flow, watching women sway with lotus flowers tucked into their wigs, their movements bold and unapologetic. You'd probably trip trying to mimic them, earning a laugh from a nearby baker. The air's electric, and you feel the gods' eyes on you, approving, or maybe just amused. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some revelers drank beer laced with mandrake, a plant thought to loosen inhibitions and boost desire. Imagine sipping that, realizing it tastes like regret, and still hoping it works its magic. You'd chuckle, picturing yourself double-checking the recipe with a skeptical squint. Historians still argue whether these festivals were purely spiritual or a sanctioned excuse for hookups. Some say they strengthened community bonds, others hint at private trysts in the reeds. You're not sure, but the way that couple over there keeps sneaking glances suggests the latter. You weave through the crowd, past a priest tossing lettuce, yep, Min's favourite, onto an altar. The humour hits when you dodge a stray leaf, wondering if it's bad luck to get hit. The festival's energy is infectious. Men chant, women clap, and kids dart underfoot, stealing honey cakes. You notice a group of singers praising Hathor, their lyrics about love and moonlight just shy of scandalous. These events let Egyptians shed their daily roles, farmer, scribe, wife, and embrace desire as a divine gift. You're starting to feel it too, like the music's tugging at your own heart. As the night deepens, the crowd thins, but the drums keep pounding. You linger by the river, the Nile reflecting a sky full of stars. These festivals weren't just about sex, they were about joy, connection, and thanking the gods for both. You're not ready to leave, but the music's fading, and you're carrying a spark of that energy, wondering what other wild nights ancient Egypt has in store. You're skulking through the narrow alleys of a Nile-side village, the moon casting long shadows on mud-brick walls. The air smells of cooling earth and faintly of the fish someone's grilling nearby. You're not here for a midnight snack. You're navigating the dangerous waters of adultery, where forbidden love in ancient Egypt could cost you more than a broken heart. Every rustle makes you jump, and you're half expecting a nosy neighbor to pop out with a torch. This is a high-stakes game, and you're about to learn what happens when passion breaks the rules. Adultery was a serious offense, but it wasn't rare. Egyptians were human, after all. A mainstream fact sets the scene. Legal texts from the Ramesside period, around 1200 BCE, show that cheating could lead to fines, public humiliation, or even divorce with hefty penalties. You're imagining a guy like Senet, a potter with a wandering
eye, sweating as he sneaks to meet his lover. You'd probably trip over a stray cat trying to follow him, blowing his cover.
The rules were stricter for women. Court wives could lose property or face banishment, while men often paid a fine and moved on. Typical double standard, and you're rolling your eyes. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some adulterers used secret signals, like tying a red ribbon to a doorpost to arrange meetups. Picture fumbling with the knot, heart pounding, hoping no one's watching. You'd laugh, thinking it's like leaving a coded post-it note, but the stakes were no joke. Historians still argue whether these punishments were enforced consistently or if wealth bought leniency. Some say elites skated by with bribes, others point to court records, showing even nobles faced disgrace. You're not sure, but Senet's nervous glance suggests he's not betting on mercy. You pause by a low wall, overhearing whispers from a darkened courtyard. It's a couple, their voices tense. maybe planning their next move or arguing over who was too loud last time. The humor hits when you imagine their panic if a dog barks. Nothing kills the mood like a village wake-up call. Adultery wasn't just a personal risk, it disrupted families, inheritances, and the social order. You notice a small shrine to Hathor nearby, her statue serene despite the drama. Cheaters sometimes prayed for forgiveness, but you're betting Hathor's not in the mood to cover for them. As you slip back into the shadows, the Nile's quiet hum reminds you of the bigger picture. Adultery was a crack in Egypt's carefully balanced world, where love was supposed to strengthen, not shatter. You're starting to feel the weight of those stolen moments, the thrill and the cost. The village grows still, and you're left, wondering how many secrets these walls hold and whether Senet's heart is worth the price. You're lingering in the cool shade of a temple courtyard, the air heavy with lotus blossoms and the faint buzz of flies. Stone pillars loom, carved with gods who seem to watch your every move. You're not here for prayers. You're chasing whispers of same-sex relationships in ancient Egypt, glimpses of love that didn't fit the standard script of pharaohs and wives. These stories are shadows, tucked between the lines of official records, but they're real. And you're piecing them together like a puzzle in the Nile's soft light. It's a quiet hunt, and you're treading carefully, unsure what you'll find. Egyptian society was built on order, marriage, heirs, the Nile's rhythm. But love didn't always follow the rules. A mainstream fact grounds us. The tomb of Nyankakhnum and Khnumhotep, two men from around 2400 BCE, shows them embracing, noses touching, in a pose usually reserved for spouses. You're imagining standing before that relief, the stone cool under your fingers, wondering if they were lovers or just close friends. You'd probably overthink it, like analyzing a cryptic text from a crush. Their titles, royal manicurists, add a twist. Even in love, they kept the pharaoh's nails on point. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some love poems, scribbled on papyrus, use gender-neutral terms, letting men or women read them to anyone. Picture a scribe sneaking one to his boyfriend, blushing as he hands over the scroll. You'd chuckle, thinking it's like sliding into someone's DMs with a vague lyric. Historians still argue whether these relationships were accepted or hidden. Some say elite men could love freely if they kept it discreet. Others think only the gods got a pass, like Horus and Seth's mythical fling. You're not sure, but the tomb's intimacy feels like a bold statement carved for eternity. You wander past a statue of Anubis, his jackal eyes unreadable. Same-sex love wasn't flaunted, but it wasn't erased either. You imagine two soldiers sharing a tent by the Nile, their laughter muffled to avoid the captain's ear. The humor hits when you picture them arguing over who gets the better blanket. Love's universal, even in the petty stuff. These relationships likely happened in the margins, servants, artisans, maybe even priests, where eyes were less prying. You notice a faded graffito on a wall, two names linked by a heart-like symbol. It's faint, but it's there, a whisper
of defiance. As you step back into the courtyard sunlight, the Nile glints, carrying secrets downstream.
These loves weren't shouted, but they existed, woven into Egypt's human tapestry. You're starting to feel their courage, loving against the grain in a world of rigid roles. The temple grows quiet, and you're left wondering how many other stories lie buried, waiting for someone to notice. You're weaving through a bustling port along the Nile, where the air smells of fish, tar, and the sharp tang of spilled wine. Boats bob against wooden docks, and you're dodging sailors haggling over baskets of dates. You're not here for trade. You're slipping into the shadowy world of prostitution, where paid companionship thrives in the crevices of ancient Egyptian society. This isn't the temple or the palace, it's the gritty underbelly of love where desire meets commerce, and you're about to see how it all works without tripping over a stray rope. Prostitution existed in Egypt, not as a secret, but as a fact of life, woven into the economy like beer or linen. A mainstream fact anchors us. Records from Deir el-Medina around 1200 BCE mention women called entertainers who offered more than music or dance, often working near taverns or ports. You're picturing a woman like Tia, coals smudged from a long night, her laughter drawing sailors like moths. You'd probably fumble your coin trying to buy her a drink, earning a teasing smirk. These women weren't outcasts. They paid taxes, sometimes owned property, and moved freely. Which surprises you? Here's a quirky tidbit. Some prostitutes wore distinctive blue lotus tattoos on their thighs, a nod to Hathor, and a subtle ad for their services. Imagine Tia hiking her dress just enough to flash the ink, sealing a deal, without a word. You'd chuckle, thinking it's like a business card with better branding. Historians still argue whether these women were empowered or exploited. Some say their independence was revolutionary. Others point to texts suggesting they faced social stigma, especially from elite wives. You're not sure, but Tia's confident stride suggests she's not losing sleep over gossip. You pause by a tavern, its reed awning sagging. Inside, men clink clay cups, and Tia's negotiating with a merchant, her voice low but firm. The humor hits when you overhear her mock his cheap offer, her wits sharper than his dagger. Prostitution wasn't just about sex, it was a transaction of charm, flattery, even companionship. Some women worked festivals, like that wild opet feast we danced through, blending into the crowd until the torches dimmed. You notice a small Hathor amulet around Tia's neck, a reminder that even here, the gods are watching, or at least winking. As you move back toward the docks, the Nile's current pulls at the boats, and you feel the weight of this world. These women navigated desire with skill, carving out lives in a society that both needed and judged them. You're starting to admire their grit, their ability to turn fleeting moments into power. The port grows quieter, and you're left wondering about Tia's story, her dreams beyond the next coin. You're perched on a low stool in a sunlit courtyard, the Nile's breeze stirring the palm fronds overhead. A group of young women chatter nearby, their voices mingling with the clink of bronze anklets as they braid each other's hair. You're not just eavesdropping, you're digging into the cultural weight of virginity in ancient Egypt, a concept that's less about purity and more about practicality, power, and divine favor. It's a topic that hums beneath the surface of marriages and rituals, and you're piecing it together, trying not to knock over the jug of barley beer at your feet. Virginity wasn't the obsession here that it became in later cultures, but it carried meaning, especially for women. A mainstream fact grounds us. Marriage contracts from the Middle Kingdom around 2000 BCE often valued brides who hadn't been with men, as it ensured clear lineage for inheritance. You're imagining a girl like Iset, nervous but proud, her family touting her untouched status to seal a good match. You'd probably fumble a reassuring pat on her shoulder, tripping over cultural norms. Unlike some societies, Egypt didn't fetishize virginity. It was a bargaining chip, not a moral crown. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some temple rituals for Hathor required pure priestesses who'd fast and wear white linen to signal their status, but the rules were fuzzy. Virginity could mean ritual purity, not always physical. Picture Iset dodging questions about her love life while carrying a sacred sistrum. You'd laugh, thinking it's like dodging a nosy aunt at a family reunion. Historians still argue whether virginity was a strict requirement or a flexible ideal. Some say it mattered only for elite brides, others point to myths where goddesses like Isis wielded power without such constraints. You're not sure, but Iset's sly grin suggests she's got her own plans. You watch the women weave lotus flowers into their wigs, a symbol we've seen before, hinting at youth and readiness for love. Virginity's value was practical. Families wanted heirs, not disputes over paternity, but it wasn't a public spectacle. You notice Iset's mother whispering advice, probably about charming her betrothed without giving too much away. The humor hits when you overhear a tip about batting eyelashes like a cow at market. Romance with a side of livestock metaphors, classic Egypt. Unlike the strict codes of later eras, Egyptian women could navigate this space with some freedom, especially after marriage. As the courtyard fills with laughter, you realize virginity was less about shame and more about strategy, a step in the dance of building a life. The Nile sparkles beyond the wall, and you're starting to see Iset not as a symbol, but as a person, balancing expectation and desire. The sun climbs higher, and you lean back, wondering how she'll play her hand in this game of love and legacy. You're standing in a small, dimly lit room, the air thick with the scent of myrrh and the soft moans of a woman in labor. Reed mats cover the floor, and a clay lamp casts shadows on walls painted with images of Taweret, the hippo goddess who guards mothers. You're not just a bystander, you're witnessing the sacred dance of childbirth in ancient Egypt, where sex and love culminate in a moment both divine and dangerous. Every breath feels heavy with hope, and you're trying to stay out of the way, clutching a jug of water like it's your only job. Childbirth was a pivotal event, tying families to the gods and the Nile's endless cycle. A mainstream fact anchors us. Medical papyri from around 1500 BCE, like the Kahun papyrus, describe rituals and remedies to ease labor, including chants to Isis and amulets tied to the mother's thigh. You're watching a midwife, her hands steady, murmur a prayer as she massages the mother's belly with oil. You'd probably spill the oil, earning a glare, but her calm is infectious. This isn't just about a baby, it's about Egypt's future, one birth at a time. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some women sat on birth bricks, decorated with protective spells, to squat during delivery, believing the magic grounded them. Picture balancing on those, cursing gravity, while a midwife cheers you on. You'd laugh, imagining the bricks wobbling like a bad yoga class. Historians still argue whether these rituals were spiritual or practical. Some say the bricks and chants boosted morale. Others think they reflected deep faith in divine intervention. You're not sure, but the mother's fierce focus, gripping a Taweret figurine, suggests she's banking on both. You notice a group of women nearby, singing softly to drown out the pain. Their family, neighbors, weaving a cocoon of support. The humor hits when one auntie sneaks in a joke about the baby inheriting grandpa's big nose, easing the tension. Rituals surround this moment. The midwife burns resin to ward off evil, and a cord is tied around the mother's waist, symbolizing Hathor's embrace. If the baby's a girl, you're told she'll get a tiny lotus pendant. A boy, a best charm. You're struck by the care, the way every detail ties this birth to the gods and the community. As the labor intensifies, the room feels smaller. The Niles hum a distant pulse. Childbirth was risky, many didn't survive, but it was also a triumph, a moment when women became creators, like Isis herself. You're starting to feel the weight of this dance, the blend of fear and joy. The midwife's voice rises, urging strength, and you step back, awed by the power in this fragile, sacred space. You're seated in a scribe's cramped office, the air dusty with the scent of ink and old papyrus. A reed pen scratches nearby, and you're surrounded by stacks of documents, some curling at the edges like they're tired of their own stories. You're not here to file taxes, you're untangling the legal mess of divorce in ancient Egypt, where marriages end not with a bang but with a carefully worded contract. The Nile's hum filters through a high window, and you're trying to follow the paperwork without sneezing on someone's life savings. Divorce was surprisingly common in Egypt, a practical exit from unions that no longer worked. A mainstream fact grounds us. Legal texts from the late period, around 600 BCE, show that either spouse could initiate a split, with women often keeping their dowry and a share of joint property. You're picturing a woman like Mary, a potter, with a sharp tongue, marching in to demand her freedom. You'd probably drop the papyrus trying to keep up with her, fumbling like an intern on day one. Women had rights here, more than in many ancient cultures, but men still had an easier time walking away. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some divorce agreements required the ex-husband to swear an oath by Hathor, promising not to hassle his former wife. Imagine him muttering it under his breath, hoping the goddess isn't taking notes. You'd chuckle, picturing Mary smirking as he stumbles over the words. Historians still argue whether these divorces were truly equitable or tilted toward men. Some say women's property rights gave them leverage. Others point to social pressures that made leaving harder for women. You're not sure, but Mary's steely gaze suggests she's not waiting for anyone's permission. You glance at a contract on the table. It's ink detailing who gets the goats, the grain, and the good linen. The process feels modern. Mediation, not drama, but the stakes are high. Divorced women could remarry, but gossip, like that adultery we dodged in the alleys, could sting. The humor hits when you spot a clause about returning a borrowed bronze pot, petty even in 600 BCE. You imagine Mary arguing over it, turning a breakup into a kitchenware showdown. Scribes like the one eyeing you now were key, turning heartbreak into neat columns of hieratic script. You notice a small Bez figurine on his desk, maybe a nod to happier bedroom days. As you lean back, the scribe's pen keeps scratching, and you realize divorce wasn't just an end, it was a chance to rewrite your story. The Nile keeps flowing, outside, steady as ever, and you're starting to admire Mary's courage, her refusal to stay in a script that no longer fits. The office feels smaller now, but you're content to linger, wondering what new path she'll carve. You're standing in the grand hall of a pharaoh's palace, the air heavy with the scent of myrrh and polished stone. Massive columns loom, painted with gods and lotus blooms, and you're trying not to gawk at the gold leaf glinting everywhere. You're not here for the decor, you're confronting the unsettling norm of royal incest, where pharaohs married siblings to keep their bloodline divine. It's a practice that feels alien, like stepping into a myth where the rules don't apply, and you're bracing yourself to understand it without tripping over your own modern biases. In ancient Egypt, royal incest was less about romance and more about power and divinity. A mainstream fact anchors us. During the 18th dynasty, around 1400 BCE, pharaohs like Tutankhamun married their sisters or half-sisters, such as Ankhesenamun, to preserve the sacred lineage tied to gods like Osiris and Isis. You're picturing a young king, his crown heavy, exchanging vows with a sister who's also his queen. You'd probably fumble a polite nod, feeling like you've wandered into a family reunion with way too much at stake. This wasn't love as you know it. It was a divine contract, sealing the throne's legitimacy. Here's a quirky tidbit. Royal couples sometimes shared childhood nicknames etched on amulets to show their bond predated the crown. Imagine Tut calling his sister Little Lotus while signing state decrees. You'd smile, but the weight of their roles, God Kings untouchable, makes it bittersweet. Historians still argue whether these marriages were consummated or symbolic. Some say they produced heirs like Tut's stillborn daughters. Others think some were ceremonial, with concubines handling the heir-making. You're not sure, but the palace's silence feels thick with secrets. You notice a relief on the wall showing a royal pair enthroned, their hands touching in a way that's both formal and intimate. The humor hits when you spot a tiny carving.
Of Bess nearby, that goofy god we've seen before, as if even he's out of place in this solemn setup.
These marriages weren't just personal, they were propaganda, proving the pharaoh's divine right to a skeptical court. You imagine the siblings navigating this, balancing duty with whatever human feelings lingered from shared childhoods. The pressure to be gods, not people, must have been crushing. As you step toward a balcony, the Nile sparkles below, indifferent to the palace's strange norms. Incest kept the royal line pure. But it also isolated these rulers, trapping them in a gilded cage. You're starting to feel the cost of their divinity, the way it shaped every touch and vow. The hall grows quiet, and you're left wondering how they found moments of humanity in a world that demanded they be more than human. You're strolling through a bustling market in Thebes, the sun scorching your shoulders as vendors hawk baskets of figs and turquoise beads. The air hums with chatter and the faint strum of a lute, but you're not shopping. You're slipping into the world of ancient Egyptian beauty standards, where the art of attraction was as deliberate as a pharaoh's tomb. Every kohl-lined eye and lotus-scented wig is a signal, and you're decoding what made hearts race along the Nile. You're trying to keep up, but you're already sweating through your linen, hoping you don't look like a lost tourist. Beauty. In Egypt wasn't just vanity, it was power, a way to charm gods and mortals alike. A mainstream fact grounds us. Tomb paintings from the New Kingdom, around 1300 BCE, show men and women with slender waists, broad shoulders, and symmetrical faces, idealized as signs of divine favor. You're eyeing a woman like Neph, her skin smoothed with ochre paste, her eyes sharp with kohl. You'd probably smudge the makeup trying it yourself, earning a laugh from her. These standards weren't random. They echoed the gods, like Hathor's flawless glow, tying beauty to holiness. Here's a quirky tidbit. Men and women shaved their heads, wearing wigs scented with lotus oil to signal status and allure. Picture slipping on a heavy wig only to realize it smells like a flower shop explosion. You'd chuckle, imagining the itch during a hot date. Historians still argue whether these beauty rituals were about seduction or social rank. Some say wigs and makeup marked class, others think they were weapons of desire used to catch a lover's eye. You're not sure, but Neph's confident. Toss of her wig suggests she's playing both games. You pause by a stall selling malachite powder, ground into green paste for eyeshadow. Neph explains it's not just pretty, it wards off evil, like sunglasses with a divine perk. The humor hits when you try applying it, ending up with a streak across your cheek, looking like a kid who raided mom's makeup. Beauty was practical too. Shaved bodies kept lice at bay, and scented oils fought the Nile's humidity. You notice men nearby, their chests oiled to gleam, strutting like they've nailed the look. It's not just women. Men had to compete, their kilts cut to show off toned legs. As you move through the market, the Nile glinting nearby, you realize beauty was a language, spoken in glances and gestures. It wasn't about vanity, but connection, a way to say, I'm here and I'm worth noticing. You're starting to admire the effort, the way every detail was a step in the dance of desire. The crowd thins, and you linger wondering how Nef's coal holds up in this heat, and what it takes to shine in Egypt's endless sun. You're tucked into a dimly lit corner of a perfumer's workshop, the air thick with the heady mix of frankincense, myrrh, and something floral you can't quite place. Clay jars line the shelves, their contents glowing in the flicker of a single oil lamp. You're not just sniffing around, you're diving into the ancient Egyptian art of seduction through perfume, where a well-crafted scent could turn heads or seal a romantic deal. The Nile's hum seeps through the walls, and you're trying not to knock over a precious vial while you learn the tricks of olfactory charm. Perfume wasn't just a luxury in Egypt, it was a weapon of attraction, as vital as coal or a lotus wig. A mainstream fact grounds us. Texts from the Old Kingdom around 2500 BCE describe perfumers blending oils like lotus and cinnamon for elite women and men to wear at banquets or temples. You're picturing a woman like Kemet, dabbing a mix behind her ears before a festival. You'd probably sneeze mid-application, ruining the mood, but her precision is mesmerizing. These scents were meant to evoke Hathor's allure, making you irresistible, or at least smell like you tried. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some perfumes included hippopotamus fat to make the scent cling longer, a secret only the bravest noses dared to know. Imagine Kemet stirring that in, poker-faced, while you gag at the thought. You'd laugh, picturing the jar labeled Eau de Hippo in a modern store. Historians still argue whether these scents were purely seductive or had ritual purposes. Some say they honored gods during offerings, others think they were social signals marking you as desirable or rich. You're not sure, but Kemet's sly smile as she tests a batch suggests she's aiming for hearts, not altars. You pick up a small alabaster vial, its contents warm from the day's heat. The perfumer, a wiry man with stained fingers, explains how lotus oil, yes, that flower again, mimics desire's fleeting bloom. You try dabbing some on your wrist, feeling briefly glamorous until you realize you've overdone it, smelling like a walking garden. The humor hits when the perfumer deadpans. Less is more, as if you've insulted his craft. Perfume was unisex. Men like that Mason car we met wore it too, their kilts wafting myrrh to compete with the ladies. You notice a clay tablet, listing orders for a festival, proof that this was big business. As you step back, the workshop's glow fades, and you realize perfume was more than scent. It was a spell, a way to bend the air around you. The Nile keeps its steady pulse outside, and you're starting to see Kemet's confidence as power, her fragrance a quiet command. You linger, wondering how one whiff could shift a stranger's glance, and what it takes to bottle desire itself. You're swaying in a torchlit courtyard, the Nile's soft ripple blending with the strum of a harp and the pulse of a hand drum. The air is warm, scented with wine and the faint musk of bodies pressed close. You're not just a guest at this feast. You're caught in the dance of intimacy, where ancient Egyptians used movement to spark connection, flirt, or seal a romantic moment. Your sandals scuff the stone, and you're trying to follow the rhythm without flailing like a startled ibis. This is seduction in motion, and you're about to learn its steps. Dance was more than entertainment in Egypt. It was a language of desire woven into festivals and private gatherings. A mainstream fact grounds us. Reliefs from the New Kingdom, around 1300 BCE, show dancers performing at banquets, their movements mimicking Hathor's grace to evoke love or fertility. You're watching a dancer like Marek, her hips swaying in a linen skirt, beads clicking with every turn. You'd probably trip over your own feet trying to copy her, earning a giggle from the crowd. Her dance isn't just pretty, It's a spell, drawing eyes and quickening pulses. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some dances included tossing lotus flowers to a chosen partner, a flirty move that doubled as a public proposition. Picture merit lobbing a bloom at a shy scribe who fumbles the catch and blushes. You'd laugh, imagining yourself dodging a flower like it's a dodgeball. Historians still argue whether these dances were choreographed rituals or improvised flirtations. Some say they followed strict temple scripts. Others think dancers like Murray had room to improvise, stealing the show. You're not sure, but her confident spin suggests she's calling the shots. You notice the crowd leaning in, men and women alike, their wine cups forgotten. Merit's movements are precise, arms arcing like the Nile's curves, feet tracing, patterns that feel ancient. The humor hits when a tipsy guest tries to join in, his clumsy shuffle earning a playful shove from a friend. Dance was unisex. Men performed too, their steps bolder, like that kilted guy we saw strutting with a leopard
Sash.
You recall those festival nights where dances blurred into celebrations of desire and you're starting to feel the pull, like the music's tugging at your own hips. As the harp fades, Meret pauses, her chest heaving, a lotus flower tucked into her wig. The courtyard hums with whispers, and you realize dance was a bridge between strangers, lovers, even gods. The Nile's glow flickers beyond, and you're caught in the moment, admiring Maret's power to turn a step into a story. You're not ready to leave the rhythm, but the night's winding down, and you're wondering what other moves Egypt's heart might teach you. You're leaning against a mud brick wall in a quiet village square. The Nile's murmur mingling with the cluck of chickens and the chatter of women washing linens nearby. The sun's dipping low, casting golden streaks across the dust, but you're not here to soak up the view. You're tuning into the sharp sting of gossip, the invisible web that shaped sexual reputations in ancient Egypt. Every whisper carries weight, and you're eavesdropping on the rumors that could make or break someone's love life. You're trying to blend in, but you're half expecting a pointed glance for loitering too long. Gossip wasn't just idle talk in Egypt. It was a social tool, policing behavior and guarding the community's delicate balance. A mainstream fact anchors us. Court records from Deir el-Medina around 1200 BCE show neighbors reporting on each other's affairs, with accusations of infidelity leading to fines or public shaming. You're picturing a woman like Annette, a baker, with a quick laugh, suddenly dodging whispers about a late-night visit from a married scribe. You'd probably spill your beer trying to warn her, earning a raised eyebrow. Reputation mattered, especially for women, whose honor tied to family stability. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some gossip spread rumors by leaving marked pottery shards near someone's door, like an ancient version of a shady group chat. Imagine Annette finding one, scratched with a crude lotus symbol hinting at her loose ways. You'd chuckle, thinking it's like getting tagged in a vague social media post, but the stakes are real. Historians still argue whether gossip was a community check or a weapon of envy. Some say it kept moral order, others think it targeted women unfairly, amplifying small slips. You're not sure, but Annette's tense shoulders as she passes suggest she's feeling the heat. You overhear two women by the washing pool, their voices low but sharp, dissecting a neighbor's flirtation at the last festival. Maybe that lotus-tossing dance we saw. The humor hits when one mimics the guy's clumsy moves, nearly dropping her laundry. Gossip spread fast here, carried by market chats or tavern boasts, and it could ruin marriages or scare off suitors. You notice a small Hathor shrine nearby, where Annette might pray to clear her name, but gods don't silence tongues. Men gossiped too, like that Mason Carr, maybe grumbling about a rival's charm to feel better about his own. As the square empties, the Nile's glow fades and you realize gossip was a shadow over love. shaping who dared to desire and who stayed safe. You're starting to feel Annette's frustration, the way whispers cling like dust. The village grows still and you're left, wondering how many secrets fueled these rumors and whether truth ever mattered as much as the story told. You're sitting cross-legged in a shaded courtyard, the Nile's breeze stirring the air as a group of teenagers giggle nearby, tossing a leather ball between them. The scent of baked bread drifts from a nearby oven, and you're not just watching the game, you're uncovering how ancient Egyptian youth were taught about love, sex, and the messy business of growing up. This isn't a classroom with papyrus textbooks, it's a world where lessons come through whispers, rituals, and the occasional awkward family talk. You're trying to blend in, but you're half expecting to be roped into a game you'll lose spectacularly. Education about love in Egypt wasn't formal, but it was deliberate, woven into daily life and rites of passage. A mainstream fact grounds us. Texts from the New Kingdom, around 1300 BCE, show that parents and community elders guided youths through festivals and marriage talks, teaching them roles via stories of gods like Hathor or Osiris. You're picturing a boy like Joseph, gangly and all elbows, listening wide-eyed as his uncle explains how to court a girl without offending her father. You'd probably fumble the advice, tripping over your own sandals, but Joseph's soaking it up, nervous but eager. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some girls learned about seduction by practicing Hathor's dances at festivals, mimicking moves like those we saw Meret perform under the watchful eye of aunts. Imagine Joseph's sister, T, twirling with a lotus tucked in her hair, giggling when she trips. You'd laugh, thinking it's like a middle school dance with higher stakes and better costumes. Historians still argue whether these lessons empowered youth or just enforced norms. Some say they gave kids agency to navigate love, others think they were scripts to keep society's order. You're not sure, but T's shy confidence suggests she's learning more than steps. You notice an older woman nearby weaving a reed, mat while dropping cryptic hints about pleasing a husband to T. The humor hits when Joseph overhears, turns beet red, and pretends to study a pebble. Lessons weren't just verbal. Youth watched marriages like Annie and Meret's we met earlier, or caught gossip about affairs like Annette's rumored fling. Boys might get a min amulet like Car's with a nudge about being ready, while girls were gifted faience beads to signal maturity. You spot a small Bez figurine on a ledge, a reminder that even kids knew the bedroom gods were watching. As the ball game winds down, the courtyard grows quiet, and you realize these lessons weren't just about sex. They were about fitting into Egypt's rhythm, balancing desire with duty. The Nile glints beyond steady as ever, and you're starting to admire Joseph and T's courage, stepping into love's maze with only stories to guide them. You linger, wondering what advice they'll pass on and how it feels to learn the heart's rules under the Nile's endless sky. You're wandering through a dimly lit tomb gallery, the air cool and musty, heavy with the scent of ancient stone and faint traces of resin. Your torch casts flickering shadows on walls painted with vivid scenes, each one a window into private moments of love and desire. You're not just sightseeing, you're studying the erotic glimpses in ancient Egyptian art, where passion is captured in delicate brushstrokes, subtle but unmistakable. The Nile's distant pulse echoes in your mind, and you're trying not to bump into a sarcophagus while deciphering these intimate stories. Egyptian art wasn't shy about desire, though it cloaked it in elegance. A mainstream fact anchors us. Wall paintings from the New Kingdom around 1300 BCE often depict couples in tender poses, hands touching, eyes locked, using symbols like lotuses or mandrakes to hint at sensuality. You're staring at a scene
of a man and woman sharing a cup of wine, their knees brushing under a table. You'd probably blush, feeling like you've interrupted a date, but the artist meant for you to see this. It's a celebration of connection.
The lotus in her hair, like those we saw in dances, whispers of more than polite sips. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some banquet scenes show guests with cones of scented fat on their wigs, melting down their necks as the night heats up, a visual nudge at loosened inhibitions. Picture the sticky mess and you'd laugh, imagining yourself dodging the drip like it's a party hazard. Historians still argue whether these images were literal or symbolic. Some say they captured real flirtations. Others think they were idealized, meant to please gods like Hathor with visions of harmony. You're not sure, but the couple's sly smiles feel too human to be just divine propaganda. You move to another panel where a woman plays a lute, her gaze fixed on a man holding a lotus. The brushwork is delicate, but the tension's thick. Music, like Merit's dance, was a spark for romance. The humor hits when you notice a tiny cat under the table, swiping at a spilled fig, oblivious to the mood. These paintings weren't explicit, unlike some cultures' art, but they didn't need to be. Every line carried intent. You recall those hieroglyphs we decoded with their pomegranate innuendos and see the same playfulness here. Even in tombs, meant for eternity, Egyptians wanted love's spark to shine. As you step back, the torchlight softens, and you realize these artworks aren't just decoration, they're stories, freezing moments of desire for the afterlife. The tomb feels less cold now, warmed by the humanity in these strokes. You're starting to feel the artist's skill, painting not just bodies, but feelings. The Nile's rhythm lingers in your thoughts, and you linger too, wondering what other.
Loves these walls hold, etched forever in Egypt's silent stone.
You're perched on a wobbly stool in an apothecary's cluttered shop, the air thick with the tang of crushed herbs and something faintly sour bubbling in a clay pot. Shelves sag under jars of natron, honey, and dried lotus petals, and you're trying not to sneeze as dust swirls in a shaft of Nile-side sunlight. You're not here for a cold remedy. You're exploring ancient Egyptian medicine's quirky fixes for romantic ailments, from lovesickness to bedroom flops. This is where science meets superstition, and you're about to test the cures, hoping you don't end up with a potion worse than the problem. Egyptians treated love's woes with the same care as a broken leg, blending practical remedies with divine pleas. A mainstream fact grounds us. The Ebers Papyrus from around 1550 BCE lists treatments for heart weakness, likely lovesickness, using herbs like coriander and incantations to Hathor. You're picturing a lovesick scribe, Tar, moping over a girl begging the apothecary for a fix. You'd probably spill the coriander trying to help, earning a sigh. These cures aim to soothe the body and soul, tying romance to health in a way that feels oddly modern. Here's a quirky tidbit. One remedy for male weakness involved rubbing a paste of garlic and acacia on, well, sensitive areas to boost vigor. Imagine Tar wincing as he applies it, praying it doesn't sting. You'd laugh, thinking it's like slathering on spicy cologne and hoping for a miracle. Historians still argue whether these treatments worked or were pure placebo. Some say garlic circulation boost might have helped. Others think faith in Hathor was the real medicine. You're not sure, but Tar's nervous fidgeting suggests he's desperate enough to try anything. You pick up a small jar labeled with a lotus hieroglyph. Its contents a mix for calming a racing heart, probably for those festival crushes like the ones we saw dancing under torches. The apothecary, a wiry woman with ink-stained fingers, mutters a charm as she grinds herbs. The humour hits when she warns you not to mix it with beer, as if you'd chug it at a tavern. These remedies weren't just for men. Women used tonics to ease menstrual pain or enhance fertility, often with that crocodile dung we've dodged before. You notice a Bess figurine on a shelf, a nod to bedroom success, and recall Car's amulet for similar hopes. As you set the jar down, the shop's chaos feels like a mirror of love itself. Messy, hopeful, a little absurd. The Nile's steady hum seeps through the walls, and you're starting to admire the apothecary's blend of faith and grit, crafting cures for the heart's wild leaps. You linger, wondering if Patar's garlic gamble paid off, and what it takes to heal a longing that no herb can touch. You're resting on a woven mat in a quiet village home, the Nile's gentle lapping mixing with the creak of a wooden loom nearby. The air smells of warm bread and the faint tang of age-worn linen, and you're watching an elder, her hands gnarled but steady, mend a fishing net. You're not here to learn her craft. You're exploring how aging shaped attraction and desire in ancient Egypt, where love didn't fade with wrinkles but took on new rhythms. It's a softer side of romance, and you're trying to soak it in without knocking over the clay lamp flickering at your side. Age didn't dim desire in Egypt, though it shifted how love was lived. A mainstream fact grounds us. Tomb inscriptions from the Old Kingdom around 2500 BCE show elderly couples depicted with affection, often holding hands or sharing offerings, suggesting love endured beyond youth. You're picturing an old weaver, like Merit, her eyes crinkling as she teases her husband about his snoring. You'd probably fumble a compliment trying to join their banter, tripping over your own respect. Elders weren't sidelined, they were valued, their experience guiding younger lovers like Josa and T we met earlier. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some elders wore amulets of Bez, that goofy bedroom god, to keep their spark alive, believing his grin could fend off time's toll. Imagine Merit tucking one under her shawl, winking at her husband like they're still festival sweethearts. You'd chuckle, thinking it's like popping a vitamin with a side of divine sass. Historians still argue whether aging reduced sexual expectations or just changed them. Some say elders focused on emotional bonds, others point to medical texts prescribing tonics like that garlic paste for Ptah for older men. You're not sure, but Merit's sly grin suggests she's not done flirting. You notice a small jar of lotus oil on a shelf, its scent softer than the heady perfumes Kemet wore to seduce. Elders favoured subtler fragrances, signalling wisdom over
Wild passion, but they still dressed to attract. Loose linens, yes, but with elegant pleats.
The humour hits when Merit recounts a festival where she outdanced a younger rival, her husband cheering like a lovesick teen. Age brought status, especially for women who, like that apothecary, became advisors on love or matchmakers for girls, like T. Men, too, leaned on experience, sharing tales of courtship to boys like Josa, though you suspect some stories got embellished. As the loom's rhythm slows, the Nile's glow fades outside, and you realize aging didn't end desire. It deepened it, weaving love into legacy. You're starting to feel Merit's quiet strength, her ability to hold romance through time's changes. The room grows still, and you linger, wondering how she and her husband keep their spark, and what it means to love when the years pile like sand along the Nile. You're perched on a creaky wooden bench in a riverside tavern, the Nile's shimmer visible through a reed curtain, its scent mingling with spilled beer and roasted fish. The crowd's a mix, Egyptian traders, Nubian merchants, even a sunburned Greek sailor nursing a clay cup. You're not here for the drinks, you're comparing how foreigners viewed sex and love in ancient Egypt, their customs clashing or blending with the Nile's ways. It's a cultural crossroads, and you're trying to catch every detail without getting roped into a bar bet you'd definitely lose. Egypt's openness about sex fascinated and baffled its neighbors, who brought their own rules to the Nile. Our mainstream fact grounds us. Trade records from the late period, around 600 BCE, show visitors like Greeks and Nubians adopting Egyptian marriage contracts but often tweaking them to fit their traditions. You're picturing a Nubian trader like
Amun haggling over a dowry while his Egyptian bride insists on her property rights, like Mary did in that divorce office.
You'd probably mix up the terms, earning a laugh, but the negotiation feels like a dance of compromise. Here's a quirky tidbit. Greek sailors sometimes mistook Egyptian women's sheer dresses, like Senu's one shoulder number, for scandalous invitations, only to learn they signaled status, not availability. Imagine Amun's friend, a Greek named Nikos, blushing when he realizes his flirty offer got a polite but firm rebuff. You'd chuckle, thinking it's like misreading a text emoji and diving into embarrassment. Historians still argue whether Egypt's sexual openness influenced its neighbors or just confused them. Some say Greeks adopted Hathor's sensual rituals, others think they clung to stricter codes, eyeing Egypt's ways warily. You're not sure, but Nikos's sheepish grin suggests he's learning fast. You overhear a Nubian woman at the next table, her accent thick, describing a fertility dance from her homeland, less fluid than Meret's Hathor-inspired moves, but just as bold. The Egyptians nod, intrigued, offering her a lotus-scented oil like Kemet's, a gesture of shared sensuality. The humor hits when Nikos tries joining the conversation, mangling a compliment about her anklets and spilling his beer. Foreigners brought their own gods. Nubians revered fertility deities like Bes, while Greeks leaned on Aphrodite, but Egypt's pantheon, with Min's lettuce and Tauret's hippo fierceness, often stole the show. You notice a small Hathor amulet on the bar, a nod to the local queen of love. As the tavern hums, the Nile's flow outside feels like a reminder of Egypt's pull, bending foreign hearts to its rhythm. You're starting to see how these outsiders adapted, borrowing Egypt's confidence while holding their own. The crowd thins, and you linger, wondering how Amun and Nikos navigate love in this melting pot, and what stories they'll carry beyond the Nile's banks. You're standing in the cool silence of a rock-cut tomb, the air heavy with the scent of ancient resin and the faint dust of centuries. Your torch flickers, illuminating shelves stacked with pottery, jewelry, and small figurines, each a clue to the lives and loves of those buried here. You're not just exploring a grave, you're uncovering tales of romance etched into Egypt's burial goods, where desire and devotion linger beyond death. The Nile's distant hum feels like a heartbeat, and you're trying not to bump into a canopic jar while tracing these final love letters. Tombs were more than resting places. They were stories, preserving the heart's truths for eternity. A mainstream fact grounds us. Burial goods from the New Kingdom, around 1300 BCE, often included personal items like love poems on papyrus or paired statues of couples, symbolizing eternal union. You're picturing a small figurine of a man and woman, hands linked, their painted eyes locked forever. You'd probably fumble the delicate clay, heart racing at its fragility, but it's a testament to love's lasting power, like those elders Merit and her husband we met. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some tombs held tiny, lotus-shaped vials once, filled with perfume like Kemet's seductive blends, meant to keep the deceased alluring in the afterlife. Imagine a widower tucking one beside his wife, hoping she'd charm the gods. You'd smile, thinking it's like slipping a favorite lipstick into a time capsule. Historians still argue whether these goods were practical for the afterlife or purely sentimental. Some say they ensured comfort in the next world. Others think they were gifts from the living, tying hearts across death's divide. You're not sure, but the vial's delicate curve feels like a whisper of devotion. You notice a painted chest, its lid showing a couple sharing a lotus, like those banquet scenes we saw, their intimacy frozen in vibrant ochre. The humor hits when you spot a tiny Bess figurine nearby, that cheeky bedroom god guarding their eternal date night. These items weren't random. Widows like Annette, dodging gossip, might have chosen them to honor a lost love, or children like T placed them to keep parents' bonds alive. You recall the tomb of Nyankhnum and Khnumhotep, their embrace a bold love story, and wonder if similar tales hide here, unspoken but carved. As you step deeper, the torchlight softens, and you realize these goods aren't just objects. They're promises tying love to the stars. The tomb's stillness wraps around you, and you're starting to feel the weight of these gestures, the way they anchor hearts against time's erosion. The Nile's pulse lingers in your thoughts, and you linger too, wondering what stories these treasures tell and how love survives when the body fades. You're reclining on a soft bank of the Nile, the river's surface a mirror of stars that seem to pulse with the night's quiet breath. The air is cool, scented with damp reeds and the fading warmth of earth. And you're not just stargazing, you're reflecting on love's legacy in ancient Egypt, how it shaped lives from pharaohs to potters and left ripples that still touch us. The water's gentle lap feels like an invitation to linger, and you're letting the stories we've explored settle, weaving them into a final tapestry under the endless sky. Love in Egypt wasn't just a feeling, it was a force, binding families, gods, and the land itself. A mainstream fact anchors us. Temple inscriptions from the Ptolemaic period around 300 BCE describe love as a divine gift, with Hathor's name carved alongside vows of fidelity and fertility. You're picturing couples like Annie and Merit, their shared bread from that marriage contract, or Merit and her husband still flirting in their twilight years. You'd probably sigh, wishing for their kind of bond, but their story lives in the Nile's flow, connecting past to present. Love was Egypt's heartbeat, from festival dances to tomb figurines. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Egyptians believed stars were the souls of lovers, reunited in the sky, guiding mortals below. Imagine Kemet, our perfumer, whispering to her beloved, promising to find him among those lights. You'd smile, thinking it's like naming a star for someone, but with more cosmic romance. Historians still argue whether love's prominence in Egypt was unique or echoed other cultures. Some say the Nile's fertility cult made it special. Others think neighbors like Nubians shared similar passions, as we heard in that tavern. You're not sure, but the stars above feel like they hold every story we've met. You trace the waters, edge with a finger, recalling moments. The lotus in Meret's dance, the gossip stinging Annette, the tomb's tender figurines. The humor hits one last time as you picture Tar, that lovesick scribe, still rubbing garlic paste and hoping for a miracle. Love was messy, sacred, strategic, yet always human, whether in a pharaoh's incestuous vows or Tia's tavern negotiations. It drove spells, art, even crocodile dung potions, each a thread in Egypt's vibrant weave. You feel the Nile's current, steady as the love that built this world, and it's comforting, like a lullaby. As the night deepens, the stars grow brighter. and your thoughts slow, drifting like the river itself. You're safe here, wrapped in the warmth of stories that have carried us through temples, markets, and tombs. The Nile's flow is softer now, its ripples fading into a gentle hum, and you feel the weight of the day slipping away. Let the water carry you, let the stars hold you, and let Egypt's loves whisper you into rest. Close your eyes, breathe deep and sink into the quiet where the heart's oldest songs still echo, guiding you to dreams as endless as the river's path. Sweet dreams.